Hey, so we're on to chapter 20. Something exciting happened. Cole was kidnapped. Hopefully they kill him because I hate his guts because he's so freaking annoying, but I doubt that'll happen. Anywho, on to chapter 20. Bergman pulled into the circular drive in front of his hideaway as Vale and I gaped at the view out of the van's front window. Tastefully lit by low wattage lamps and a couple of well-placed spots, the beachfront two-story looked like it would have been just as comfortable on Cape Cod. The landscaping, the wraparound porch, the white wicker furniture for cripe's sake, it might have come from a latest issue of Better Homes and Gardens. "This is your safe house?" I asked Bergman. "Yeah, why not?" I waited to reply until he got out and opened the side door. "Well," I said, as Vale and I handed him Cassandra's luggage, "it's just so pleasant." I got out, grabbed a box, and followed him to the front door. "I always pictured you in a cave, or at the very least, one of those rickety old mansions with droopy shutters and more tunnels than windows." "I prefer a really excellent security system." He put the pegs down, lifted the lion's head door knocker, and thumbed a switch underneath it. The knocker slid sideways, revealing a square of metal and electronics that looked detailed measurements of Bergman's left eye before deciding he passed muster. The door clicked several times and stopped. "Wait," said Bergman, as I reached for the latch. Another couple of seconds passed, and then I heard a final click. Bergman nodded, so I turned the knob. As the door swung open, Vale said, "Just remember, Bergman, sooner or later you will have to give us a way to get inside without the benefit of your eyeball." "No problem. As soon as all of our stuff is unloaded, I'd modify the system." Guys, so crazy. I stepped into the front hall, and a piercing whistle stopped me in my tracks. Knowing Bergman, if I moved any further, a cannon would descend from the ceiling and blow my head off. "What is that?" Phil asked as Bergman came in to give me a critical look. I held up my hands. "I didn't do anything." "But you did. That's a wavelength sensor. You're sending some sort of signal." "Is it the watch?" I asked, snapping the van to see if that stopped the alarm. "Nope." Bergman had run up to the van. He brought back a box, dug around inside, and came out with a handheld wand that looked like a supersized cigar lighter. Starting at my head, he swept it down my body. As soon as it reached my navel, it sent out its own warning beep. I raised my shirt. "It's your belly ring," Bergman said, adding urgently, "Give it to me." I took it off and handed it to him. He jumped back into the van, started it up, and raced off. In the time it took us to figure out how to disengage the alarm, he returned. "I planted it on an ice cream truck. Whoever's following a signal will hopefully zero in on the truck and forget the signal stopped here for a couple of minutes. Pete said I had to break it to activate it. That's only when then our backup team got involved." Bergman grimaced. "Somebody activated it remotely and sent your team a false OK signal." "The same somebody who supplied it in the first place?" wondered Vale. "Well, it's not one of mine," said Bergman. "That's how they found us," I said. "That's those God's arm fakes on the road, Lillian at the restaurant, and then again at the condo, Mr. and Mrs. Magoo in the hotel. All they had to do was follow the belly ring signal." I clenched my jaw, trying not to kick a hole in the wall. "When I get a hold of this senator, I'm going to rip his ears off and stuff them down his throat." "What about Martha?" Vale asked. I waved an impatient hand. "My gut tells me she's innocent, so until we find some hard evidence nailing her, she's off my list. I'd tell him about Albert's contribution to the evidence search later." I don't even remember what that was. "And the raptor? I'll leave him to you, as long as you make it vile. God, that pisses me off." The anger wasn't going to help me think clearly, though, so I tried to walk it off by exploring the house. Its interior lived up to the exterior's promise. Wooden floors, colorful throw rugs, overstuffed furniture, and antique accessories in twisted iron and oak made the house feel like the set for one of the daytime dramas Granny May used to love to watch. She called them her stories, and never failed to shake her head sadly when last season's true love became this season's big breakup. I just about had my emotions back under control by the time when we'd unloaded Bergman's van into the living room, a light, airy place with pale blue bead-board walls and a huge fishing net hanging from the ceiling. A long mahogany bar separated it from the kitchen feed a party of 30 dining room. A hallway painted pastel green led to 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. Stairs just to the right of the doorway led to a large family room, a home office, and a master bedroom with a view that made me wish I could sail. I thought there might be some truth to the idea that surroundings influence mood. Maybe I should paint my apartment. Once everything was in, Cassandra and I started unpacking while Bergman and Vale set everything up. I don't really know why we needed such a detailed description of this house? Anyone? Once everything was in, Cassandra and I started unpacking while Bergman and Vale set everything up. Several of the boxes held computer components, and before long they transformed the dining room table into a communication center. 4 PCs sat back to back, connected to each other, the internet, and a central printer through a maze of cords that lay like big sloppy coil basket in the middle of the mall. The table was so long that half of it still remained free for other purposes. I'm sorry, I missed the sentence. Not that it's important, but I'll read it anyway. Our laptop lay beside them, and yet separate, a snooty, secretive stepsister. I really hate this book, you guys. Bergman and Vale began setting up a mini lab on the bar, while Cassandra stored the empty boxes in a downstairs bedroom, so I got to work elsewhere. Jazz, why did you rearrange the furniture? Bergman asked a few minutes later, staring curiously at me over a row of shiny beakers. What do you mean? I looked around the living room and realized I'd done it again, without any conscious thought, as though an entire section of my brain had switched to blackout mode. I'd reproduced the same design I'd created at Diamond Suites. What the hell? I murmured. Cassandra came down the hallway, took a look at my little project, and sent me a look of trepidation that cut straight to my heart. Vale's forehead creased, and the corners of his lips drooped. For him, it was the equivalent of a thunderous frown. You deceived me about this, didn't you? He demanded, waving his hand to indicate the new room arrangement. This is not how it looked once at your house. I shook my head. I cannot abide liars. Oh, fuck you, Vale. Sorry, that's me. That's not her. His tone, straight out of the Knucklecracker's handbook for schoolmarms, made me grit my teeth. Before I could defend myself or plan a massive spitbag campaign with Jimmy and Susie that would probably get us expelled, but would be well worth the trouble, Cassandra spoke up. The fuck? And maybe it would explain that better than Jasmine. She brought out the smallest of her 4 suitcases and set it on the ottoman. I'd moved from its spot beside the couch not 5 minutes earlier. Now it set such a stage. I sank onto the couch beside her, Bill still looking irritated, sat opposite us in a winged chair upholstered in blue twill. Cassandra opened the case, reached into it, and brought out a foot-high pyramid made of multicolored glass orbs, each about the size of a large marble. I moved the case out of the way, and Cassandra gently set the piece on the ottoman. Is that what I think it is? I asked. It's the Enchlycleos, she said, nodding. My second vision is recorded here. She touched the top of the marble of the pyramid, and the whole thing shivered in response. You may want to watch this in private. No, I said, challenging Vale with my glare. Let's keep this all wide open. That way nobody can accuse me of more lies, and later we can talk about how I can't abide people who leap to judgment. I let the anger carry me, gave me the strength to sit in the living room like a regular person rather than lock myself in the closet like a scared kid. It's hard. It hurts to stop hiding. Writing another, and probably my last wave of anger, said, let's do this. Yeah, what the fuck is he such a judgmental piece of shit? She pressed on the top marble, which bent but didn't break, like the jello molds Granny May used to make because she thought we liked the taste of rubbery strawberry letters and 2-legged elephants. Enchlycleos Oscalio Vera Proma, Cassandra whispered. Well, that's what it sounded like anyway. She kept going, reeling off a list of words that sounded like Latin but weren't. As she spoke, the marble shivered again, then began to roll in random directions, though they never completely lost touch. It reminded me of a clock gear, yet not one movement seemed to trigger another. The pyramid ended itself, rolling into a variety of other formations that resembled the prow of a ship, a sailor's hat, a Harley-Davidson, and a strand of DNA. This is so cool, I whispered, despite my pounding heart and nauseating fear of how Bill would react to the new discovery. Bergman had left his lab computer center, a miracle in itself, and sidled over to the empty wing chair. He stood behind it, looking as if he wanted to attack the Enchlycleos with the bat. At the last marble stood in vertical rows of 3. At last, wow. Oh my god, I hate this book so much. At last, the marbles stood in vertical rows of 3, forming a sort of plateau with a single bluish gold globe sitting above the rest. Is that me? I whispered, feeling a little faint as Cassandra nodded. Are you ready? She asked. I rubbed sweaty palms down my pants. Yeah, let's get it done. My voice sounded fake in my own ears, a recording in definite need of a remix. She touched the marble and said, De Bitten. She pulled her hand away and sat back, making room for the images that rose from it, digital quality holographs in living color and sound. I saw myself, 14 months younger and light years closer to innocence, sitting in the living room of what looked like an old frat house. The stuffing peeked out of several holes in the couch and love seat. The coffee table had once been a working door that now sat on a double-high pile of cement blocks, and the chairs only rocked because their legs were uneven. Look, Jess, said Bergman. The furniture in the picture is arranged the same way you did it just now. The same way she always does it, Phil said, folding his arms across his chest. Since you're so determined to be mad at me, go right ahead, I said. But the fact is, I never knew why I kept moving the furniture around. I wasn't usually even aware I was doing it. Then you said something, and it seemed like such a strange thing to do. I shrugged. I made up a reason so you didn't think I was crazy. Did I detect a slight softening in Bill's expression, or was I just fishing? Never mind. The show had to go on. In a room it hurt my heart to see again, my band of Helsingers and I sat around the recycled door, playing a card game I knew I'd been good at, but could no longer remember the name of. I could tell we meant to go back out, because we still wore our uniforms. Superman suits, we called them, feather-light body armor encased in navy blue leather. We were all high on adrenaline and success, toasting each other like German bobsledders, eating pizza, for God's sake. Pizza. The room tilted and nearly took me with it, but Bill's hand on my shoulder steadied me. I stood up, grateful he still thought enough of me to leave his chair. I'm sorry, guys. This is how I know that I'm so done with this book. I looked up, grateful he still thought enough of me to leave his chair. He settled on the arm of the couch beside me. I only remember bits of this, I said, sensing that explanations might keep me from falling headfirst into the nightmare that, until now, had only played itself behind my eyelids. That's Matt on my left. He just turned 29 2 weeks before. The town is from the trip we'd taken to Hawaii together. My throat closed on the words, and for a minute I couldn't speak. Matt and I sat on the couch, talking softly while the others played out the hand. Brad and Olivia, a married couple from Georgia, sat in the tattered love seat that met our couch at 45 degrees. They took turns throwing red plastic chips into the growing pile and teasing each other about losing the down payment on their house in a single hand. Dylan, a muscle-bound vamp who'd been turned in the 60s, sat on the floor to my right, cradling his crossbow, eating all the topping off his pizza. He threw what was left to Thea, also a vamp and sometimes his lover, depending on how much he irritated her, who sat on the floor to Olivia's left. Tomato sauce made her gag, but she couldn't get enough of that stuffed crust. We'd go back into the field as soon as the pizza and the cards had played themselves out, but for now we were just kicking back and enjoying the company. That's Jessie, sitting in the chair across from us, the one in front of the fireplace. She was my sister-in-law. I shook my head, not knowing how to capture in words Jessie's vibrant, infectious humor, her intense loyalty, her deep and abiding passion for my brother. She was my hero. Jessie had draped her leg across the chair beside her, as if saving it for David. Having made her bet, she was fashioning an airplane from a couple of paper towels. I knew eventually it would come floating my way, and I would be required to throw my napkin back at her, but for now I was content to snuggle with my honey. I felt a little sick to watch my handsome young lover rear his head back and laugh at one of my wise-ass comments, as if I was some grief-crazed widow rolling out the home movies for a torturous walk over the coals of memory lane. But God, it was good to see him, to see all of them, and remember with a sort of shock how happy we'd been together. I started talking again, fighting the vortex of pain that had robbed me of everything I'd liked about myself. Nobody ever heard the knock at the door. No one except Ron. He was Dave's sub, a rookie straight out of the academy. He was still kind of sick from the slaying. Not the vampire bit, the human part that comes before you get to the vampires. Anyway, he'd been visiting the upstairs bathroom periodically. We watched him, a young, spiky-haired version of David Spade, with the physique of a marathon runner and the constitution, at least temporarily, of a tubercular alcoholic. He was coming down the stairs, one hand on the rail, the other on his stomach. In the living room it was my deal, and I just began to shuffle the cards. Ron came down the steps slowly, stepping in eerie time to the rhythm of my shuffling. When he reached the bottom he heard the knock. Nobody else did. They were all yelling at me. "Get the lead out and deal already," Jessie roared, throwing her paper airplane at my head. I grinned. "Just getting the cards warmed up for you, Jess." A chorus of "Aw, come on," and "Deal, damn it," drowned out Ron, who was saying, "Please tell me you didn't order more pizza," as he opened the door. A blue-eyed, long-legged blonde stood on the threshold carrying an insulated pizza box container. She smiled coyly at Ron. Hi, wow, are you a SWAT guy? I love your uniform. Ron grinned. The poor fool couldn't help it. She resembled every centerfold he'd ever drooled over. Kinda, he said. How much do I owe you? $16.50, she said, flashing a couple of dimples, this time accompanied by a tempting bit of cleavage. Do you mind if I come in? She asked, looking over one shoulder with just the right hint of fear. It's kind of creepy out in the dark. Sure, come on in. My house is your house, he said, a chivalric knight taking temporary ownership of federal property to save his distressed damsel. It turned out she was just damned. Ron died with both hands in his pocket, fishing for a 20 while a goofy, I've bagged a playmate smile played across his face. Pizza Girl had lunged for his throat and torn out his larynx before he understood his mistake had killed us all. The complaints from my comrades had finally reached a satisfying peak, and I dealt Matt his first card when we heard Ron's body hit the floor. Jesse, with the best view of the entrance, jumped up and yelled, Vampire, just as Pizza Girl cried, Enter and be welcome, out the front door. A stream of vamps poured into the house with the impact of a tidal wave, but we were nothing if not prepared, and all of us still wore the weapons we'd used to clear the nest earlier that day. Bart and Olivia fought shoulder to shoulder, pumping bullets into the vamps. Pizza Girl, her chest a mix of her own blood and Ron's gore, waded through the barrage, lofted the love seat, and threw it at them. They went down in a flurry of splinters and stuffing, and the vamps went after them, swarming like locusts until all you could see were Brad's twitching fingers and all you could hear were Olivia's fading screams. Dallin smoked two of the vamps who came after him, but with no time to restrain his crossbow, he had to resort to hand-to-hand combat. His punches rocked the three monsters who came for him. His kicks knocked him back. I'm sure I heard ribs crack before they overpowered him. One vamp, who looked like he should have been doling out cash at First National drive-up window, picked Dallin up and threw him headfirst into the fireplace, where he lay, limp and broken as a discarded doll. He followed up with a poker through Dallin's heart. Thea emptied her magazine into the swarm before retreating to the fireplace wall and having at them with the ash shovel. She held her own until Dallin lost his battle. The momentary distraction of seeing him fade to nothing was all her attackers needed. They jumped up like a gang of rapists, only it wasn't her body they wanted. They bled her dry and finally smoked her, while Matt, Jesse, and I made a fighting retreat to the kitchen and the back door that entered into it. We delivered bolts, body blows, and bullets in equal numbers. For a minute there was so much blood and smoke in the air you'd swear it was storming plasma. Get out, Jessie, I yelled. She stood closest to the door. Get help. She ran to the door and I shot the vamp who tried to intercept her, tore a hole through his brain that would take days to heal. She wrenched the door open and stepped outside, but they were waiting for her, a hungry little horde of newbies so freshly turned their bite marks still remained, livid and glowing to my new-seeing eyes. Through a haze of grief and unshed tears, though my teeth were chattering like a badly tuned engine, I managed to say, I don't remember anything at all after Jesse's death. I hate for you to see this, Cassandra whispered, clutching her hands together so tightly her nails made bloody imprints in her skin. But it's necessary in order for you to understand the final outcome, to believe. Oh, I believed I was God's biggest mistake for some time now, Cassandra. I thought as I watched Matt and former me trade blows with our adversaries. It seemed like they were everywhere, although I only counted 4. They just moved so quickly it was like fighting an army. What? Said a voice from my holographic memory, one I now recognized. Are they still alive? Aiden Straight stepped into the room and we experienced a sudden ceasefire. He sneered at us, his fangs dripping with the blood of the other Helsingers. When you killed my humans, you set me back years in my research. Did you know that? He snatched a knife from the butcher block table that stood just inside the kitchen living room, threw away. That made me angry. It's not nice to make Aiden angry, is it, children? The other Browns flinched at their little own hidden memories and shook their heads. One moment Aiden was sidling toward us, the next he was a blur of motion. He dove at me, the knife he held a glittering extension of his arm. Jasmine! I'd never heard such fear in Matt's voice. It squeezed at my heart, but I couldn't comfort him because I couldn't escape the blade. Unbalanced by the speed of the attack, realizing my fatal vulnerability, I felt this tremendous oceanic regret that my life should end so soon, with so much left undone. And then Matt was there, pushing me aside, standing where I'd stood, trying to deflect the blade, trying to defend me. I grabbed at him, attempted to reverse direction and push him out of the way. I was still innocent enough to believe the blade would pause, give me the time I needed to save him. But all my youth and all my will did nothing to slow the blade's descent. I watched it fall and wanted to be the one beneath it after all, but time ran out on me. Both in that place and in Cassandra's living room, tears rained down my cheek. I jerked like a marionette as Aiden's blade pierced Matt's chest. He crumpled to the floor, pulling my whole world with him. An abyss of grief opened beneath me, obliterating every other thought. I kneeled over Matt, weeping uncontrollably, and Aiden, his knife still in Matt's chest, closed in. One kick, powerfully dealt and directly on target, snapped my neck. I slumped over Matt, so obviously dead that present-day me put my hands to my chest, puzzled and amazed that I could feel my heart beating. Every eye in the room was on me, but I couldn't tear my gaze from the tragedy that had ended life as I knew it. I shook my head. I didn't know, I told him. I don't remember this. Bergman started to speak. How? It's a shame we had to kill them, in a way, said holographic Aiden. They would have made excellent lab rats. We tried at least one of them, Pizza Girl had come to survey the damage. You can experiment on her. She nudged my body with a toe. Did you see this one's face when she died, Aiden? I love to see their faces as they die. Suddenly, like a window opening in my brain, I remembered why I missed Christmas. I'd been chasing Pizza Girl. In fact, I'd nailed her with the syringe Liliana had escaped. And my other long blackouts, yeah, those had been revenge strips too. During the past 14 months, I'd killed every vampire in the holograph except Aiden Straight. Good God Almighty! If one more insight crashed into my skull today, my eyes would stop spinning and just completely pop out of their sockets. In the holograph, there was no movement, no noise, and yet all the vamps jerked their heads up, looked at one corner of the kitchen ceiling as if something hovered there, threatening their very existence, and it did. I could almost see it, like a superheated air over a bonfire. Out, hissed Pizza Girl. Back to the front door. Move. They ran like scared kids, cleared out of the house so fast the curtains rolled in their wake. I don't see anything, said Bergman. I felt sorry for him because I could. My soul rose from my body and stretched, reaching over to touch Matt's soul as it hovered in the air, seafoam green laced with dark blue, a living jewel that suddenly flew apart like poor Charlie's head. Most of it raced out into the night, but some remained, swirled into my silver red essence and stayed there, waiting with me, becoming a part of me. A golden light, bright as a meteor, warm as a pair of fuzzy slippers, moved from its spot in the superheated corner of the ceiling and encompassed me, coalescing into a human form, into a man. He could have been one of David's men. His bearing was so upright, so military. But he was as gentle as a lover as he turned my body so my sightless eyes faced him. He laid my hand across my stomach and straightened my twisted neck. He leaned over and laid his lips on mine, pressing his breath into my mouth. Then he sat back on his heels. What is it you want, Jasmine? He watched my mouth open, heard me say, to fight. Nodding with satisfaction, he touched the tips of his fingers to my neck and leaned in to lend me one last breath. So, we learn a lot more about Jasmine. That she was dead, and now she's not. Cole's still kidnapped. And I guess we'll get the next chapter tomorrow.